When 39-year-old LaToya Cole left Houston for Dubai, she believed she was stepping into the miracle she had begged the universe for. After years of heartbreak, 2 children raised alone, and a lifetime of being told she picked the wrong men, she finally met someone online who made her feel chosen. He was wealthy, generous, soft-spoken, the kind of man who wired money before asking questions, who sent voice notes that felt like safety, who talked about a future she never thought she deserved. But from the moment she landed, something felt off. The man she had fallen in love with wasn't at the airport like he promised. The driver who collected her wouldn't answer simple questions. And as she was escorted deeper into a world she didn't fully understand, a quiet unease began to grow inside her. Because once that door finally opened, the truth she walked into would set off a chain of events neither of them could escape. And within days, their online love story would turn into something far darker, far more complicated, and ultimately deadly. Welcome back to True Crime Retold, where we uncover cases that test everything you think you know about human nature. If you find our deep dives as gripping as we do, please take a second to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new case. Now let's get into it. Before Dubai was ever an idea, before she imagined a life bigger than Houston, LaToya Cole carried years of heartbreak on her back like a weight she had learned to walk with. She grew up in a working-class neighborhood, raised by a single mother whose hands were always cracked from cleaning houses and whose eyes carried permanent exhaustion. Her mother never sugar-coated life. "Men come and go," she would say. "Your responsibility is these kids and yourself." LaToya grew up believing that strength was the only language the world understood. Her first serious relationship arrived when she was 20. His name was Marcus, a smooth talker with a good smile and just enough charm to make her feel like she mattered. For a while, she convinced herself he was her way out, the partner she could build a family with. But the cheating came, then the emotional manipulation, and by the time she found out she was pregnant, Marcus had already started disappearing. When her son was born, he was nowhere to be found. His last text had been, "I'm not ready to be a dad," as if readiness was optional for the person walking away. Years later, she tried again with someone different. Darnell, more mature, more stable, or so she thought. He talked about wanting a family, about building something, about giving her daughter the father figure she never had. But promises from broken men are easy to make. They cost nothing. Slowly, Darnell's affection turned into control. He criticized her clothes, questioned her friends, monitored her phone, and eventually his anger began to surface in ways that made her flinch. By the time she gave birth to her second child, he was already cycling in and out of jail, leaving her with more responsibilities and fewer illusions. Raising 2 kids alone in Houston wasn't cheap, and life didn't pause because she was tired. LaToya worked whatever she could, bartending at night, braiding hair in her living room, selling clothes online, picking up shifts at pop-up shops just to keep her lights on. Some months she made it. Some months she didn't. That was the rhythm of her life. Over time, survival pushed her into the world of sugar daddies, not out of desire, but out of necessity. Older men who paid rent, dropped allowances, or covered bills in exchange for attention and company. Social media made it look glamorous, like a luxury lifestyle. But the reality was far from it. It was negotiations, expectations, and a constant awareness of power imbalance. It was pretending to care about conversations she didn't want to have, dealing with men who thought payment entitled them to her time, her attention, her softness. She hated it, but she did it because she had kids who depended on her. Her closest friend, Tia, couldn't understand why LaToya still believed in love. Tia loved the game, loved the money, the gifts, the trips. She was the one who always said, "Girl, use men before they use you. Stop catching feelings. Collect your bag." She meant well in her own way, but her advice always hit LaToya differently. Because deep down, LaToya wasn't built like that. She didn't want to manipulate men. She didn't want to live a transactional life forever. She didn't want to become cold just because men had been cruel. She still wanted softness. She still wanted stability. She still wanted someone to come home to, someone who meant what they said and didn't disappear when life got hard. But after everything she'd been through, she learned to keep those desires quiet, hidden, protected. Dating apps. She avoided them like poison. The one time a friend convinced her to try, she deleted her profile within a week. Every man she matched with wanted one thing, and none of them were shy about saying it. And the moment she mentioned her 2 kids, the tone changed completely. Messages slowed. Conversations died. One man told her directly, "I'm not trying to be nobody's stepdad." That line stuck with her for years, so she gave up on the idea of apps. Not because she didn't want love, but because she was tired of feeling like a burden for having children she loved. Instead, she focused on Instagram, the one place she still felt alive, posting selfies, makeup looks, little outfit videos, goofy stories with her kids. She wasn't thirst-trapping, she was reclaiming confidence piece by piece. Some nights, when the kids slept and the house finally got quiet, she scrolled for hours, liking, laughing, sharing, trying to fill the loneliness she never admitted out loud. And that's where life was for her, stuck between survival and longing, between independence and exhaustion, between wanting to protect her heart and secretly praying someone would prove worthy of it. She didn't know it yet, but the next turn in her life wouldn't come from a man in Houston or from a dating app she refused to use. It would come from a stranger thousands of miles away, watching her Instagram stories from a palace she had never seen. Across the world from Houston, where LaToya struggled to piece her life together one paycheck at a time, Arjun al-Rashid lived in a kind of wealth most people couldn't imagine. He was born into one of Dubai's prominent families, a lineage with influence, money, and respect stretching back generations. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, luxury cars, private chefs. Every corner of his childhood was polished, expensive, and carefully maintained. Yet beneath all of that shimmer, Arjun carried something no money in the world could fix. He had always been known as the big one in the family, a title whispered at gatherings, sighed about during doctor visits, and joked about in ways that never truly felt like jokes. Even as a child, relatives commented on how fast he outgrew his clothes, how he breathed heavily after short walks, how he always reached for seconds at dinner. Kids teased him at school. Cousins teased him at home. And adults never realized how deeply the teasing bruised him. By the time he reached his early teens, food had become both comfort and punishment. Every time he felt lonely, he ate. Every time he felt ashamed for eating, he ate more. It was a cycle he didn't understand at the time, and no one around him knew how to help him break it. As the years passed, his weight didn't simply increase. It trapped him. His 20s were supposed to be full of youth and adventure, but instead, they marked the beginning of a physical decline that grew impossible to hide. Walking long distances became difficult. Stairs became impossible. Outings became rare. Eventually, his world shrank to one level of the family home, and that level had to be remodeled just to accommodate him. He had a custom-built, reinforced bed. The floors underneath were strengthened with steel beams. He had machines to help him sit up, nurses monitoring his breathing, attendants assisting him with basic tasks no grown man ever wants help with. People saw the palace around him and assumed he lived a dream life. They saw privilege, servants, money. But none of them saw the cage he lived in. A golden cage, yes, but a cage all the same. His body had become a barrier, a wall separating him from the world outside. The more his weight spiraled, the more people avoided looking him in the eye. Even family visits became short, awkward, and filled with pity disguised as politeness. And every woman who tried to get close seemed to want only one thing. They didn't flirt with him. They flirted with his last name, his father's business connections, his family's money. He became a symbol, not a person. A financial opportunity, not a man. Arjun's mother reminded him constantly that he needed to marry soon, reminding him of tradition, heirs, expectations. But for Arjun, the fear wasn't marriage, it was judgment. He couldn't imagine letting a woman see him as he was, not when he could barely stand without assistance, not when he heard nurses whisper about his size when they thought he was asleep, not when he had spent years watching disgust flash across strangers' faces when they saw him in public. So he stopped trying. He stopped going out, stopped meeting new people, stopped believing he could ever be someone's choice. And then he found something that felt like a loophole in the rules of the world: the internet. Behind a screen, no one saw his body. No one judged his movements. No one compared him to the handsome men around him. Online, he could be anything: confident, charming, desirable. He discovered that with the right angle, the right words, and the right photos, people treated him differently. At first, he only watched, browsed profiles, downloaded apps, tinkered with settings. But then he made a decision he knew was wrong, and yet he couldn't bring himself to stop. He used his younger brother Kareem's photos. Kareem was everything he wasn't: athletic, effortlessly attractive, outgoing, always surrounded by friends and luxury. His Instagram looked like a billionaire's dream: jet skis, Lamborghinis, rooftop restaurants, desert adventures, yacht parties. All of it real, all of it accessible, but none of it Arjun. Still, when he used Kareem's pictures, the world softened toward him. Women he admired responded instantly. Matches happened easily. Compliments poured in. And for the first time in years, he felt something like hope. A fake hope, maybe, but hope nonetheless. He justified the lies by telling himself it was temporary. That's still my family's life. That's still my world. I'll tell her the truth when the time is right. She'll understand once she loves me. But fear always beat him to the truth. Once he started talking to someone, he couldn't bring himself to reveal who he really was. It wasn't arrogance. It was terror. Terror that she'd laugh. Terror that she'd delete him. Terror that she'd screenshot the truth and embarrass him publicly. He'd seen what the internet did to people. He wasn't strong enough to survive that kind of cruelty. So instead of telling the truth, he sent money, large sums, gifts, vacations, designer items. He thought he was being generous, but he was really buying silence, buying connection, buying the illusion of closeness. Most relationships didn't last. Women disappeared once they got enough money. Others pushed for rings and visas before they even met him. A few discovered the truth and hurled insults he remembered word for word. But he kept trying because he wasn't searching for lust. He wasn't searching for flattery. He wasn't even searching for perfect beauty. He was searching for connection, a real voice on the other end of the phone who cared about what he said, who didn't treat him like a burden, who didn't see his body before seeing his heart. Nights were the hardest. When the staff clocked out and the nurses dimmed the lights, Arjun stayed awake scrolling for hours, looking through hundreds of profiles. Women laughing with friends, dancing with kids, sitting in their cars, posing in mirrors, taking simple selfies before work. Women who looked real. Women who didn't look like the ones flashing money and captions about private jets. He wanted warmth, not vanity. Softness, not entitlement. And then one night, somewhere around 2 a.m., as he scrolled past another page of glamorous influencers and shallow captions, a picture stopped him. A woman smiling into the mirror of a cluttered bathroom, her hair loose, her expression natural. No filters, no luxury. Just a real woman in a real moment. Arjun stared at the picture longer than he meant to. There was something gentle in her eyes, something familiar, something he felt even through the screen. He didn't know her yet. He didn't know her life, her pain, or how close she was to giving up on men altogether. But he lingered on her photo long enough for a whisper to escape his lips, quiet and surprised. "She looks kind." It happened on a night that looked like every other night in LaToya's life. The kids were finally asleep, the house was quiet, and she was stretched out on her couch, scrolling through Instagram, liking memes, hearting outfit reels, replying to a few comments. She wasn't looking for attention. She wasn't flirting. Instagram was just the one place she could feel pretty for a moment without anyone asking her for something. She had just posted a mirror selfie earlier that day, hair down, soft makeup, nothing dramatic. A simple caption, "Tired, but still trying." Her followers had responded with the usual encouragement, heart emojis, compliments, supportive messages from other moms who understood exactly what that meant. And then, out of nowhere, a DM appeared. "Hey, I like your energy. You seem real?" LaToya frowned. The profile picture was of a ridiculously handsome man, sharp jawline, perfect haircut, standing beside a black Lamborghini with the Burj Khalifa in the background. His username had a foreign touch, something Arabic, and his bio mentioned Dubai, business, and 3 different luxury brands. To her, that screamed scammer. Men like that didn't message regular women from Houston unless they wanted something, and whatever that something was, it was never good. She opened the profile cautiously. Every post looked expensive. Yachts, desert safaris, private jets, expensive suits. The kind of lifestyle that felt like a movie. The kind she had only ever seen other women enjoy. She almost deleted the message. Almost blocked him, almost rolled her eyes and moved on. Instead, she typed back a single sentence. "What do you want?" A scammer usually disappeared when confronted, but this man didn't. He replied almost immediately. "Just conversation. I saw your selfie. You look kind." That word again. Kind. The same word Arjun whispered when he first saw her photo. She didn't know it yet, but that was the exact moment their worlds collided. LaToya responded slowly, suspicious but curious. He didn't ask for her number right away, didn't jump into flirtation, didn't ask for inappropriate pictures. Instead, he asked about her day, about her kids, about Houston, about her job. And he replied with full sentences, thoughtful ones, like someone actually paying attention. She still didn't trust him, but she didn't block him either. Over the next few days, their conversations grew longer. He responded consistently, morning greetings, afternoon check-ins, goodnight messages. He talked about Dubai like someone who lived there, not like someone pretending. He knew things scammers didn't know. The layout of old markets, the names of backstreet shawarma spots, the way the city smelled after rain, the difference between Emirati culture and the luxury tourist version online. She tested him with small questions, and he passed every single one. Then one day, without warning, he sent her $60 for lunch and told her, "I want to make your day easier." She almost refused it, almost, but the truth was her pantry was empty and payday was 4 days away. She didn't want to feel bought, but she also didn't want her pride to starve her kids. So she used it, and she thanked him. And he didn't turn weird about it. That was the first time she allowed herself to believe he might not be like the others. A week later, when her car broke down on the freeway and she stood crying next to the smoking hood, he stayed on the phone with her for 2 hours straight. She expected him to offer sympathy. She didn't expect him to say, "Send me the mechanic's bill." She resisted. He insisted. And by the end of that night, a $450 payment hit her account. Scammers didn't send money. They asked for it. This man was doing the opposite. Soon their communication moved to audio messages. He avoided video calls, always with a reason ready. My camera is bad. I don't like FaceTime. Privacy rules here are strict. I look tired tonight. LaToya teased him a few times about being dramatic, but she let it go. She wasn't used to men talking deeply anyway. Not men who looked like that. Nights became their soft place. After the kids were asleep and the house was finally still, she lay under her blankets and listened to his voice like it was a warm lullaby. He told her about his childhood, about expectations placed on him as the eldest son, about feeling alone even in crowded rooms, full of people who admired his money, but not his heart. She told him things she hadn't told anyone in years. She told him about having 2 baby daddies and the shame that followed her everywhere. How men dismissed her instantly when they heard she had kids. How she felt judged for being ghetto. How she felt like nobody ever chose her fully, only halfway. How she was tired of being strong, tired of surviving, tired of pretending she didn't care. He didn't mock her for any of it. He didn't pull away. He didn't use her past against her. Instead, he said, "You're real. That's rare." They bonded over loneliness. 2 people in very different worlds, but carrying wounds that made them feel strangely similar. She was a woman fighting to hold her life together. He was a man drowning in gold and still starving for connection. Their midnight conversations became the bridge between 2 lives neither of them wanted to admit were painfully empty. And then the generosity increased, not in a flashy or controlling way, but in a way that felt strangely thoughtful. He helped clear one of her credit cards, paid 2 months of rent when she fell behind after a slow work month, sent gifts for her kids on their birthdays, nothing excessive, just things they had once mentioned in passing. For the first time in years, LaToya felt something she didn't know how to name. It wasn't dependence, it wasn't infatuation, it wasn't gold digging or lust or fantasy. It was safety, emotional safety, financial safety. The kind of safety she had never experienced with any man she'd loved before. And beneath all of that, something far more dangerous was beginning to bloom, something she didn't see coming, something she didn't guard herself against. She was starting to trust him. As the months rolled by, the rhythm of LaToya's life shifted almost without her noticing. What started as casual DMs had transformed into daily devotion. Arjun messaged her from sunrise to midnight as if his entire world revolved around the sound of her voice and the warmth in her replies. He called her my queen, my future wife, the woman Allah sent to me, and every time he said it, something in her chest softened. No man had ever spoken to her with that kind of reverence. No man had ever made her feel like she was chosen and cherished, not tolerated. He told her he loved that she was real, that she had survived the struggle, that she understood life in a way women in his world didn't. He romanticized her resilience, admired her hustle, praised her strength. For a woman who had spent years being judged, discarded, and blamed for the mistakes of men, his words felt like healing. Slowly, LaToya began rearranging her life around him. She let go of one of her sugar daddies, telling him she didn't need his help anymore. She blocked another who kept insisting on seeing her. For the first time in years, money didn't feel like survival. It felt like possibility. Arjun paid her bills without hesitation, sent weekly allowances, surprised her with deposits, just because. The weight she had carried alone for so long suddenly felt lighter, and she didn't want to jeopardize that feeling. With every payment and every affectionate voice note, she started imagining a different future. Maybe she really could stop hustling. Maybe she could put her kids in better schools. Maybe moving to Dubai wasn't a fantasy, but a door opening. Arjun talked about penthouses, private schools, nannies, a life where stress didn't choke her anymore. And for a woman who'd always lived one emergency away from disaster, dreaming felt addictive. But as their connection deepened, so did the cracks. The first red flag appeared the night she went out with her friend Tia. Latoya had her hair done, makeup flawless, and wore a new dress she'd bought with Arjun's money. She sent him a picture before she left, expecting a compliment. Instead, he went silent for almost an hour. Then he replied, "Why are you dressed like that? Who are you trying to impress?" She brushed it off as insecurity, sent him voice notes to reassure him, but the shift stayed in her mind. Another time, she didn't answer her phone fast enough while helping her kids with homework. When she finally responded, he said, "I pay your bills. The least you can do is keep your phone close." His tone wasn't angry, just firm, expectant, like it was common sense. Then came the video proof requests. "Send me a picture of where you are. Show me your room. Let me hear the TV so I know you're home." He phrased them as playful, but she felt the pressure. Still, she complied. Not because she enjoyed it, but because she didn't want to risk losing everything he had given her. Losing him meant losing support, stability, hope. It meant going back to the same life she had worked so hard to escape, the life she hated, the life she thought she'd finally outgrown. And then he said the words she wouldn't forget. "I'm paying your bills, so I deserve your full attention." It stung, but it also scared her, because deep down, a voice whispered that maybe he was right. Maybe that was the price for being taken care of. Maybe this was how relationships worked when the man held all the power and money. Latoya swallowed her discomfort and blamed herself for being sensitive. She told herself that men got jealous, that all couples argued, that he was just passionate. Tia warned her, told her no man should control her like that, but Latoya shut it down. She wasn't ready to hear it. Not when she finally felt secure, valued, supported. Not when her rent was paid on time for the first time in years. And truthfully, she was terrified of going back to zero. Terrified of waking up one day and realizing everything she had was temporary. Oxygen someone else could snatch away. So she ignored the red flags, covered them with affection, and convinced herself that love just required compromise. She didn't realize it yet, but the same man who made her feel seen was also quietly shaping the walls around her. And the deeper she fell, the harder those walls became to escape. From the moment Latoya stepped off the plane, Dubai hit her like a dream dipped in heat. The airport looked like something out of a movie. Polished marble floors, towering glass walls, bright gold signage that shimmered under too perfect lighting. Everything was expensive, organized, almost unreal. She had walked through plenty of U.S. airports before, but nothing compared to this. Here, travelers moved like they belonged to a higher class of life. Designer luggage, tailored clothes, quiet confidence. And here she was. A woman from Houston with 2 kids, a cracked phone screen, and a heart full of hope she prayed wasn't foolish. Her flight had been long, uncomfortable, and filled with nerves. She barely slept. Her mind kept replaying every voice note Arjun had ever sent. The soft way he said her name, the promises of a future she had only dared to imagine, the warmth she swore she could hear in his smile. She had convinced herself that this trip would change everything, her life, her kids' lives, her future. Finally, a man who wanted her. Finally, stability. Finally, something good. But the moment she reached the arrivals hall, the fantasy began to crack. She searched the crowd for him, the handsome man from the photos. The brother he had never admitted was not actually him. She expected to see the sharp jawline, the confident posture, the smile she'd memorized. Instead, her gaze fell on a tall man in a black suit, holding a sign with her name in bold letters. Miss Latoya Cole. Her stomach tightened. "No, no, no," she whispered under her breath. This wasn't how it was supposed to happen. The love of her life was supposed to be waiting for her himself, not sending someone to fetch her like luggage. The man approached. "Ms. Latoya, welcome to Dubai. Sir is waiting." "Sir?" Not Arjun. She forced a smile, nodded, and followed. The moment they stepped outside, the heat attacked her, thick, heavy, like stepping inside an oven. Dubai's sun wasn't like Houston's. It burned from above and below, bouncing off every glass building until it wrapped the whole city in shimmering fire. She slid into the back of a black SUV as the driver loaded her luggage. The drive was both breathtaking and unsettling. Towering skyscrapers pierced the sky, each one more dramatic than the last. Twisted steel, curved glass, patterns that made no architectural sense but screamed wealth. Billboards showed perfect models advertising perfumes and watches she'd never be able to afford. Every turn revealed something brighter, bigger, richer. But Arjun still hadn't called. Her fingers hovered over her phone. Should she message him? Should she ask why he wasn't at the airport? Or should she act confident, like the kind of woman who expected drivers and luxury treatment? The city blurred by, beautiful and intimidating. After 20 minutes, the SUV veered into a private road lined with palm trees, security gates, and guards in crisp uniforms. This wasn't a hotel. This was something else. Her chest tightened as the car stopped in front of a quiet, discreet residence with frosted windows and no visible address. The driver opened her door with a stiff bow, retrieved her luggage, and escorted her to a private elevator. "Sir is on the penthouse floor," he said before stepping back. The silence in the elevator felt suffocating. Her heart thudded hard enough to feel in her throat. This was the moment she had imagined for 8 months. Meeting her soulmate, meeting the man who called her my future, meeting the man who sent her money without question, who supported her kids, who made her feel chosen. But something felt wrong, too quiet, too controlled, too staged. When the elevator doors opened, everything inside her froze. The air was cool and overly sterile, like a hospital pretending to be a luxury suite. The hallway lights were soft and dim. The floor was polished but strangely reinforced. Her steps echoed as she moved toward the only door at the end of the hall. She pushed it open cautiously. The first thing she saw wasn't a man, it was machinery. Medical-grade equipment lined the walls, oxygen tanks. A massive reinforced bed sat in the center, large enough to look like it belonged in a facility, not a home. There were ceiling-mounted lifts, a specialized mobility system, emergency buttons near the headboard. The room smelled faintly of antiseptic and expensive air freshener mixed together. Her pulse skyrocketed. Then she heard it. A sound. Not footsteps. Not a greeting. Breathing. Heavy, strained, rhythmic. The door to a side room creaked open, and a figure rolled forward. Before we continue, I just want to say, if you're still here listening to this story, thank you. This is a new channel, and honestly, every view, every like, every subscription means the world. It tells me these stories matter to you, the way they matter to me. So if you're enjoying this, hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and let us know where you're watching from in the comments below. All right, let's get back to it. A custom-engineered wheelchair emerged first, wide, reinforced, fitted with padding and mechanical supports. Then she saw him seated inside it. Arjun, not the man from the photos, not the fantasy she had been sold, not the handsome prince she had crossed an ocean for. A near 1,000-pound man struggled to breathe in front of her, cheeks flushed, hands swollen, body spilling over the sides of his specialized chair. His eyes met hers, full of fear, shame, and desperate hope. He whispered her name like a fragile confession. "Latoya, it's me." Her heart dropped to her stomach. Her mind tried to reject the sight, even as she blinked at it. Confusion first, like her brain couldn't compute what she was seeing. Then disbelief, sharp and dizzying. Then humiliation, hot and overwhelming, spreading through her body like fire. She felt stupid, exposed, played, stripped bare, and then anger. Real anger, the kind that comes from betrayal so deep it knocks the breath out of you. He rushed to speak. The words tumbled out, trembling. "The man in the photos is my brother, Kareem. Everything else, the money, the gifts, the life, it's all me. I swear it's real. I didn't know how to make you stay if you saw the truth first." Her throat tightened. Her hands shook. Every promise he ever made dissolved into dust. 8 months. 8 months of trust. 8 months of building a future in her head. 8 months of imagining a man who didn't exist. And now she stood thousands of miles away from home, in a country where she didn't know the laws, the language, or the escape route. Inside the private residence of a man who had lied about everything except his bank account. She wasn't in a love story. She was trapped inside a stranger's reality. And she had no idea how to get out. The first 24 hours in Dubai were a dizzying blur of wealth, pressure, and emotional chaos. From the moment LaToya entered Arjun's residence, he did everything in his power to smother the lie under layers of luxury. Housekeepers streamed in with trays of desserts, imported fruits, teas, and juices. Assistants brought shopping bags filled with designer robes, handbags, shoes, and 3 different perfumes. Another handed her an envelope of cash for spending, even though she hadn't asked for anything and barely had the strength to process what was happening. Arjun watched her with an intensity that made it hard to breathe. Every time her face twitched or she looked away, his expression tightened. "I wanted today to be special," he said, voice low and unsteady. "I know you're shocked, but everything I feel for you is real." He tried to smile, but it wavered. "Please, don't judge me too quickly." She forced herself to nod, though her hands trembled. Nothing about this felt safe. Nothing felt normal. The lie was too big, too heavy to ignore. But she didn't want to get emotional. Not here, not yet. Not when her instincts told her she needed to stay quiet and alert. As the hours passed, she noticed details that made her unease sharpen. Doors locked automatically behind her with a click that felt too final. Staff addressed Arjun first, even when she was speaking, and when she asked, casually as calmly as she could, about her passport, he replied without hesitation, "It's in my safe. Don't worry, it's just a precaution. Foreigners must be registered properly. I'll handle everything." The words were smooth, but the implication wasn't. Her identification, her only way out of the country, was now in his control. That night, as she sat on the sofa while he ate dinner from a tray designed for his chair, she couldn't find the right words to express the storm inside her. She had come here expecting love, romance, a future she spent months building in her imagination. Instead, she had walked into a reality she didn't choose and didn't understand. The emotional conflict was overwhelming. Part of her felt sorry for him. He clearly lived an isolated life, his breathing strained, his movements restricted, his eyes filled with a painful mixture of shame and hope. She understood why he was afraid of rejection. She understood why loneliness could twist someone's sense of right and wrong. But another part of her, the woman who had been lied to, who had struggled her whole life, who had finally believed something good had come to her, felt betrayed, trapped, and deeply angry. And Arjun's behavior quickly moved from apologetic to unsettling. At first, he kept trying to coax her into comfort with gifts and soft words. "You don't have to be afraid," he told her. "You're safe here. You're cared for here." But when she didn't respond with enthusiasm, his tone shifted. He grew agitated, sensitive, irritated by the smallest signs of distance. When she didn't smile, he asked, "Are you embarrassed by me?" When she hesitated to sit close, he muttered, "After everything I've done, this is how you act?" When she tried to excuse herself to rest, he whispered sharply, Do you know how many women dream of standing where you are right now? His words didn't come from arrogance. They came from ownership. He had invested in her, paid her bills, supported her kids, sent money every week, bought gifts, made promises. And now, in his mind, she owed him something back. Gratitude, loyalty, affection, presence, attention, something. The more she withdrew, the more unhinged his behavior became. "You're being cold," he said at one point, eyes narrowing. "Is it because of my weight, or because I'm not my brother?" "That's not it. Be honest," he snapped. "I deserve honesty after all I've done." She swallowed hard. "I just need time. You lied for 8 months. Anyone would need time." He didn't like that answer. His jaw tightened. His voice softened too deliberately. "Time for what? To decide if you're staying? To compare me to men who never treated you half as well?" It wasn't a conversation. It was emotional pressure dressed as vulnerability. Later, while they sat in separate rooms, she heard him speaking to one of the nurses in low, hurried Arabic. The tone wasn't angry. It was frantic. Moments later, the nurse approached her with a polite smile and asked what she would like for breakfast the next morning. It felt like a performance staged for her, like he wanted her to think everything was calm and controlled when he himself was unraveling. As night settled, the walls of the luxurious suite felt tight around her. She was in a foreign country, without her passport, without her support system, without any real understanding of the laws or how to leave. If she walked out the door, she'd be stopped by security, who answered to him. If she tried to contact the embassy, she didn't even know the exact address of where she was or how to explain the situation, and Arjun wouldn't stop hovering. He texted her from the other room. "Are you all right? You're not leaving me, right?" 2 minutes later, "Say something. I need to hear from you." Another, "I didn't eat all day because I was worried about you." Another, "Please don't punish me. I'm trying." She wanted to scream, she wanted to cry, she wanted to run, but fear locked her bones in place. This wasn't a fairy tale. It wasn't even a romance gone wrong. It was a trap that didn't look like a trap. Wealthy walls, expensive gifts, soft words, and a man who didn't understand boundaries because he'd never had to consider them before. By the second night, she lay awake in the guest room, staring at the ceiling. Dubai glittered outside the window like a promise. But inside, the air felt heavy, suffocating. She felt the invisible weight of a man who believed he owned her because he had loved her the only way he knew how, with money, attention, and control. She wasn't just overwhelmed. She wasn't just confused. She wasn't just disappointed. She was cornered, not by violence, not by threats, but by a man whose need for her had become a cage. The breaking point didn't come with a scream. It came quietly, slowly, like pressure building behind a dam until one hairline crack becomes a catastrophe. All day, tension sat between them like a heavy fog neither could breathe through. By nightfall, the silence was dangerous. It started with a conversation that had too many sharp edges. Latoya tried to remain calm, tried to choose her words carefully. "You lied to me, Arjun. You didn't give me a choice. You knew what you were doing." He stiffened in his chair. "I gave you everything," he said, voice rising. "I supported you when nobody else did. I did more for you in 8 months than any man has done in your whole life." "That's not an excuse for deception," she shot back. "You knew I was vulnerable. You knew I was struggling. And you used that to pull me closer." His eyes narrowed, wounded pride twisting into something cruel. "Used you? You think I used you? Look at your life before me. 2 baby daddies who left you. Men who only came to you when they wanted something. All those sugar daddies you entertained for rent money. And you dare say I used you?" Her chest tightened. His words hit every wound she'd ever carried, all the years she had been judged, abandoned, dismissed. Every insult she tried to bury clawed its way back up. "Don't talk to me like that," she whispered. "I'm the only man who ever took you seriously, the only one who saw value in you without needing your body," he said. "People like you don't get unconditional love. You get opportunities, and I gave you one." His words were knives. Every insecurity she had battled, the shame, the guilt, the exhaustion, the years of feeling less than, rose to the surface. He wasn't just arguing, he was hitting where he knew it would hurt, because he was terrified, because he could feel her slipping away, and because lashing out was easier than facing the truth of what he'd done. The argument spiraled until both of them were emotionally raw. Arjun's breathing grew heavier, strained by the stress. The nurse eventually entered to give him medication, whispering something in Arabic before stepping out quietly. Minutes later, the sedatives pulled him under. His eyes fluttered shut. His chest rose and fell with loud, rhythmic, almost thunderous breaths. The room dimmed, lights fading into a muted glow. The house fell silent around her except for the mechanical hum of machines and the deep, uneven sound of Arjun sleeping. Latoya sat on the edge of the guest bed, heart pounding. Rage burned through her, but beneath it was something colder. Fear. Real fear. He would never let her leave freely. Not without guilt. Not without punishment. Not without strings she couldn't cut. She pictured going back to Texas with nothing but humiliation, having to explain that the man she bragged about online wasn't a dream prince but a lie that flew her into a gilded cage. People would talk. They always talked. They'd say she was desperate, that she sold herself, that she fell into a trap because she couldn't stay single, because she couldn't make better choices. It felt like her entire life was closing in. Tears burned her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. She sat frozen, listening to his breathing, deep, rattling, echoing through the room. Every inhale felt like a reminder that he held every advantage: his wealth, his country, his staff, her passport, her vulnerability. She felt disgust, not with his body, but with everything around her. The lie, the control, the way he threw her past at her like a weapon, the way he made her feel bought, owned, trapped. Something inside her cracked, quiet but irreversible. Her thoughts raced in circles, crashing into each other. Fear, anger, shame, exhaustion. The crushing realization that leaving him would not be simple, that he would guilt-trip her, threaten to cut support, maybe even refuse her passport. She had walked into this place willingly, but she wasn't sure she could walk out. The more she listened to him breathe, the more panic built in her chest. Her hands trembled, her ears rang, her pulse hammered. Her mind raced to one conclusion she wished she could escape. He will never let me go. And in that dark, suffocating swirl of dread, humiliation, betrayal, and pure survival instinct, something inside her snapped. She stood up, moved toward the bed. Her steps felt distant, as if she were watching herself in a movie she didn't want to star in. She reached for a pillow, hands shaking so hard she barely gripped it. There was no thought, no plan, no logic, just a desperate, terrified, emotional impulse. A woman pushed so far past her limit she didn't recognize herself. It didn't last long. It didn't feel real. It felt like a nightmare she couldn't wake from. When it was over, silence filled the room. Latoya dropped the pillow. Her breath came in sharp, panicked gasps. She shook his arm. "Arjun?" Her voice cracked. "Arjun, wake up." She shook him again, harder. "Please, wake up." But his body stayed still, heavy, unmoving. Horror washed over her. Her legs gave out. She collapsed beside the bed, hands trembling violently. "What did I do?" she whispered. "Oh God, what did I do?" There was no fixing this, no undoing it, no escape from the reality she had just created. And as the machines hummed quietly around her, she realized her life, her children's lives, would never be the same again. The moment the reality of what she'd done hit her, LaToya felt the air vanish from the room. Her chest squeezed so tight she thought she might pass out. For several long seconds, she just stared at him, at the stillness, at the silence that seemed to swallow the entire suite. Her mind refused to accept it, refused to process the image in front of her. She kept whispering, "Please, please," even though she already knew. Then her survival instinct kicked in. Hard. She stumbled backward, shaking. Her hands were trembling so violently she could barely grip the edge of the dresser to steady herself. Her heart raced fast enough to hurt. She paced the room, pacing in tight circles, pulling at her hair, mumbling, "I need to think. I need to think. Oh God, what do I do?" Her mind screamed two truths at the same time. You didn't mean it, but no one will believe you. She knew what Dubai was like. She had heard stories, strict laws, swift punishment, and she was an American woman with a dead billionaire in the next room and no one to defend her side of the story. In every direction she looked, all she saw was doom. Then her panic shifted into something sharper. Instinct, desperation, self-preservation. She forced herself to breathe, forced herself to move, forced herself to gather any piece of control left in the room. First, she wiped her face with the sleeve of her shirt, trying to erase any trace of the breakdown she was having. Then she grabbed her duffel bag and dumped it onto the floor. She scooped up her phone charger, makeup bag, the few clothes she brought, stuffing everything back in without thought. Her brain repeated one sentence like a drumbeat. You have to leave now. She scanned the room, searching for her passport, the one thing Arjun had locked away for safety. Her eyes landed on the small black safe built into the dressing cabinet. She pushed the buttons, tried his birthday. Nothing. Tried the last 4 digits of his phone number. No luck. Her breath came fast, shallow, painful. Then something clicked in her memory. Earlier that week, she had overheard him telling the nurse the code for medication storage. It was 4 digits. She typed them in with shaking hands. The light turned green. The safe popped open. Inside lay her passport, her ID, and several envelopes of cash. She didn't think. She didn't hesitate. She grabbed everything, stuffed it into her bag, zipped it shut. Her reflection in the mirror startled her. Her eyes were red and swollen, hair wild, lips trembling. She didn't recognize the woman staring back. She didn't want to. She slipped into her sneakers, grabbed her phone, and opened the suite door. The hallway was silent. Too silent. Her pulse hammered in her ears as she walked, then speed-walked, then nearly jogged toward the elevator. CCTV cameras followed her every step. She pressed the elevator button once, twice, 3 times. The doors finally slid open, and she slipped inside, hugging her bag to her chest. Don't cry, not yet, she whispered to herself, trying to hold the pieces of her mind together. The elevator doors opened into the private lobby, where guests usually waited for staff escorts. But at this early hour, before sunrise, no one was around. She pushed through the glass doors and stepped into the warm, humid air of Dubai's dawn. A lone taxi sat outside the gate. She practically ran to it. "Airport," she said breathlessly. "Fast, please, fast." The driver looked at her, sweaty, shaken, panicked, but didn't ask questions. He nodded, started the meter, and pulled away. As they drove, LaToya kept checking her phone. No messages, no alerts, no calls from the staff or Arjun's family. She prayed she had left early enough, quietly enough, that the discovery wouldn't happen until long after she was gone. At the airport, she went straight to the ticket counter. Her voice was unsteady, but she forced herself to sound calm. "I need to fly back to Houston. I need the earliest flight. I can pay any fee." She slid Arjun's card across the counter. The agent processed it without suspicion. "There's a flight in 3 hours," the woman said. "I can get you on it." "Yes, please. Yes," LaToya said. When the agent handed her the boarding pass, her hands were shaking so badly she nearly dropped it. She walked toward security, every glance from strangers making her flinch. Every announcement over the loudspeakers felt like it had her name hidden inside it. She kept her head down, her hoodie up, her breathing shallow. In the security line, her mind kept replaying the moment, the pillow in her hands, the shock, the silence afterward. She wanted to scream. She wanted to run. She wanted to undo everything. But all she could do was move forward. She passed through security, found her gate, and sat with her arms wrapped tightly around herself. She kept imagining hands grabbing her shoulder, police shouting her name, an officer pulling her away before she could board. But no one came. When they finally called her flight, she stood up on legs that barely supported her. The moment she stepped onto the plane, she felt a flicker of oxygen return to her lungs. She sat down, buckled her seatbelt, closed her eyes, and cried silently as the plane began to taxi. While she was in the air, thousands of feet above the world, Dubai woke up. And within those waking hours, just as she feared, everything unraveled. A housekeeper knocked on Arjun's door to bring his morning medication. No answer. She knocked again. Still nothing. She entered the suite, saw the still figure on the bed, and screamed for help. Paramedics rushed in, then police, then homicide investigators. They saw the room, the state of the bed, the marks on the pillow, the time of death. And then came the footage. CCTV caught her leaving the building alone at dawn, moving fast, holding a bag close to her chest. Security matched her passport photo. Airline records confirmed she was already en route to the United States. Within hours, both countries knew her name, LaToya Cole. 39 years old, Houston, Texas, the last person to see Sheikh Arjun al-Rashid alive. And the world, both hers and his, was about to collapse. The investigation in Dubai escalated far faster than LaToya ever imagined. Within hours of Arjun being discovered unresponsive, police treated the suite as a high-priority scene. He wasn't just another wealthy man. He belonged to a family with influence, reputation, and ties that extended far beyond the Gulf. When someone with that level of visibility dies under suspicious circumstances, every agency moves. Detectives went through the suite methodically. Nothing was stolen, and there was no forced entry. The room showed no signs of a struggle by an outsider. Everything suggested the incident came from someone who had been inside willingly. Staff confirmed that an American guest, LaToya Cole, had been staying with him for several days. Hotel security footage filled in the rest. Cameras captured tension between the two earlier in the day. Body language sharp, movements rigid, gestures strained. There was footage of LaToya leaving the building before sunrise, moving quickly with a packed bag, walking with the posture of someone trying not to draw attention while simultaneously desperate to get away. There was no sign of anyone else entering or leaving around the time paramedics estimated Arjun's death. Within 24 hours, Dubai authorities had a clear timeline. The last person with him was the one who fled. From there, the case moved beyond local jurisdiction. International cooperation began. Files were sent to the U.S., including passport scans, exit records, CCTV timestamps, and a preliminary medical report. Interpol was notified. Because of Arjun's status, there was no possibility of a quiet investigation. Back in Texas, LaToya tried to fold herself back into her old life as if nothing had happened. When she returned home, she told her family only that the trip didn't work out, avoiding details. People who knew her later recalled that she seemed anxious, overly attentive to her children, and easily startled. She stopped sleeping well. She kept her phone on silent, jumped at knocks on the door, and avoided long conversations. Her mother assumed she was embarrassed that her Dubai romance had fizzled. LaToya tried to reassure herself that distance would protect her, that no one in Texas would connect her to anything happening overseas, that maybe what happened in Dubai would be handled quietly or internally. But the investigation overseas continued relentlessly. Authorities compared the timestamps of her departure with the estimated time of death. It aligned too closely. Footage from the lobby, hallway, and entrance all pointed to one conclusion. She was the only person who left during the critical window. Airline records confirmed she was already en route to the United States before anyone discovered Arjun's condition. Once the U.S. received the full packet of evidence, a warrant followed. Everything came crashing down on an ordinary morning. LaToya was at home with her children when federal agents and local officers arrived. Neighbors later recalled seeing multiple law enforcement vehicles pull up quietly, but with unmistakable purpose. Officers moved to the front door with the controlled precision of people carrying out a serious warrant. Inside the house, LaToya reportedly froze the instant she heard the knock. Nothing about it sounded routine. According to law enforcement records, she answered the door already shaking, as if she sensed exactly why they were there. Agents identified her, confirmed her identity, and moved to take her into custody based on the international request and the evidence provided by Dubai officials. The operation was efficient and coordinated. Cases involving foreign cooperation usually are. Her children reportedly witnessed part of the scene. Family members later described the moment as chaotic and heartbreaking. The kids confused and crying, LaToya overwhelmed, officers trying to stay professional while handling a delicate situation. She didn't resist, but she appeared panicked, repeating variations of the same thing over and over, that she never planned anything and only wanted to come home. Officers documented her emotional state as distressed but compliant. Neighbors watched from driveways and windows as she was escorted to the vehicle, hands secured, expression stunned. By the time she was driven away, several people on the street were already calling friends and family, trying to understand what they had just seen. Her mother gathered the children, stunned by the suddenness of the arrest and unsure how to explain what was happening. For the first time since returning from Dubai, LaToya's carefully held-together facade finally collapsed. The woman who had run across the world to escape one moment in a Dubai hotel suite now found herself at the center of an international homicide investigation. And neither Texas nor Dubai was prepared to let the case go. LaToya's arrest was only the beginning. Within hours, she was transported to a federal holding facility, then handed over to local investigators assigned to process Dubai's request. Because the case involved a foreign national and an international warrant, the interrogation began almost immediately. Interrogations in cases like this aren't dramatic. They are systematic. Investigators lay the evidence down piece by piece, watching for cracks. And in LaToya's case, the cracks appeared quickly. They started with the timeline. They showed her the exact hour paramedics found Arjun. Then they showed her the timestamp of her exiting the building. It overlapped too neatly to explain away. They had airline records, the sudden flight change, the fact that she purchased her return ticket only hours after leaving the suite. Then came the hotel footage, her movements, her hurried pace, the tension in her posture. According to investigators' notes, she initially tried to stay calm. She told them Arjun had been heavily medicated and that she believed he must have passed in his sleep. It was the version she had rehearsed in her head since leaving Dubai. A natural death, medication complications. Anything but the truth she had carried across continents. But the footage, the timelines, and the evidence were placed in front of her methodically, each piece stripping away another layer of denial. Investigators later reported that the moment they showed her the security video of her rushing out of the building before dawn, the shift in her demeanor was immediate. Her breathing changed. Her voice broke. The facade of control collapsed. What followed wasn't a dramatic confession. It was exhaustion. Investigators described her as someone who had been carrying panic for weeks, and once confronted with undeniable evidence, it spilled out in fragments rather than full sentences. She admitted that the argument the night before had been intense. She admitted she felt trapped in Dubai, overwhelmed, deceived, and afraid. She admitted she had reached for the pillow. She repeated several times that she never meant for anything to happen, that the moment was driven by fear rather than planning. She said she wanted to leave, that she thought he would never let her go without consequences. She claimed she acted in desperation, not malice. She also told investigators her version of the deception, how he used his brother's images, how she discovered his true identity only after arriving in Dubai, how her passport had been locked in his safe for security, and how the situation had escalated emotionally in the final hours. Investigators documented everything, but their focus remained centered on one fact. Regardless of the deception, regardless of the panic, regardless of emotional context, Arjun was dead, and she was the last person with him. At one point, according to the written report, investigators reminded her of the alternatives she never used. She didn't contact the U.S. Embassy. She didn't alert hotel staff. She didn't attempt to leave through legal channels. Instead, she waited until he was asleep and made a choice no amount of emotional turmoil could erase. From their perspective, it was simple. Everything she described might explain her mental state. But it didn't justify the outcome. Still, LaToya maintained she wasn't a killer. She repeated that she felt cornered, overwhelmed, and manipulated, that she thought he would control her life indefinitely, that the panic became unbearable, and that once the moment ended, she froze and ran because she was terrified of what would come next. Investigators recorded her confession, formalized it, and added it to the growing file that would soon be shared between two countries. It became one of the most important pieces of the case, not because it painted her as a monster, but because it confirmed the central question Dubai officials had already asked. Was this a planned act, or a moment of pressure that spiraled into tragedy? Regardless of her explanation, the charge remained the same. Within days, both governments were finalizing the next steps. The U.S. prepared for the legal battles surrounding extradition. Dubai waited for the official transfer of the case file, and LaToya, for the first time since the night in Dubai, understood just how far-reaching the consequences truly were. She hadn't escaped anything. The moment she left that suite, the rest of her life had already begun to unravel. By the time LaToya's case reached a U.S. courtroom, the story had already ignited international attention. Between the Dubai investigation, the Interpol involvement, and the global narrative of an American woman accused of killing a Gulf billionaire, the trial became more than a legal process. It became a referendum on guilt, desperation, and the blurred line between victim and perpetrator. Jurisdiction was handled quietly, with prosecutors relying on the broad legal framework that allows the United States to try its own citizens for serious crimes committed abroad, especially when cooperating with foreign governments. The details remained intentionally vague to the public, but the message was clear. The case would be handled on American soil, under American law, with evidence shared between both countries. When the trial began, the courtroom settled into its familiar structure. Prosecution on one side, defense on the other, both preparing to argue not just what happened, but why it happened and what LaToya's actions truly meant. The prosecution framed their story immediately and firmly. To them, this was a straightforward case of exploitation turned lethal. They argued that LaToya Cole had been living off older men for years, accepting financial favors from various sugar daddies, and when a wealthy foreign suitor appeared online, she saw an opportunity. They painted the relationship as transactional from the beginning. She needed stability. He offered it. But when she arrived in Dubai and discovered the reality of who he was, bedridden, dependent, and physically vulnerable, they claimed she snapped not from fear, but from revulsion. To the prosecution, Latoya killed Arjun because she wanted the money, not the man. They described her fleeing the country within hours as the clearest sign of motive and guilt. The prosecutor emphasized the power imbalance differently than Latoya did. They argued that she was the one with power in the moment of the crime, a physically healthy woman standing over a man whose body had long since betrayed him. He couldn't run. He couldn't fight. He couldn't even get out of bed, they told the jury. This was not self-defense. This was not fear. This was a cowardly act against someone who trusted her. They pointed to her confession, her hasty departure, and her attempts to hide the truth upon returning home. To them, it was murder softened only by the fact that she broke under pressure and admitted it. The defense countered with a completely different narrative, one centered on trauma, coercion, and years of psychological damage. They portrayed Latoya not as a manipulator, but as someone who had been manipulated her entire adult life. They told the jury about the pattern of abandonment, cheating, financial instability, and male exploitation that shaped her relationships. They described a woman who had spent years surviving by accepting whatever scraps of affection and support men offered her, often at the cost of her own dignity. In their telling, Arjun was not just a victim, he was also a deceiver. They highlighted how he had used his brother's photos, constructed a fictional identity, withheld the truth until she landed in a foreign country, and then leveraged his resources to keep her dependent. They detailed how her passport was locked away, how the environment was controlled by staff loyal only to him, and how Latoya had nowhere to turn in a country whose laws she didn't understand. The defense presented her actions not as calculated, but as the culmination of emotional collapse, a moment where panic overtook reason. They argued it was not malice but a psychological break, a snap triggered by fear, betrayal, and the claustrophobic reality of being trapped in someone else's world. To the defense, Latoya wasn't a monster. She was a woman whose life had pushed her repeatedly into corners with no easy exits, until finally, one of those corners broke her completely. Family testimonies added weight on both sides. Members of Arjun's family, his brother, cousins, even a distant aunt, told the court about his loneliness and his longing for connection. They described a man who, despite wealth few could imagine, battled isolation, shame about his body, and a deep desire to be loved for who he was. They insisted he never meant to harm anyone, that he had always been generous, gentle, and eager to help those he cared about. To them, Latoya betrayed a trust he rarely extended to anyone. On the other side of the room, Latoya's mother spoke quietly but firmly. She explained how her daughter had raised 2 children with little support, working multiple jobs, enduring judgment from neighbors who saw her as fast or irresponsible, even when she was simply trying to survive. She talked about the men who mistreated her, about the stigma of being a single mother, and the economic pressure that pushed Latoya into relationships she didn't always want, but felt she had no choice to refuse. Her testimony wasn't emotional. It was weary, shaped by years of watching her daughter struggle. The most intense portions of the trial came from the expert witnesses. Psychologists debated the effects of long-term trauma on decision-making. One expert discussed how years of instability can create patterns of hypervigilance and emotional reactivity, making a person far more likely to snap under extreme stress. Another expert countered that most individuals, even those with traumatic histories, do not escalate to lethal violence. Stress explains behavior, the expert said, but it does not excuse criminal action. Another psychologist analyzed the dynamics of entrapment in foreign environments. They explained how losing autonomy, such as being financially dependent, having one's passport withheld, and being isolated from familiar surroundings, can produce intense panic responses that override rational thought. But the prosecution's expert pushed back, arguing that thousands of tourists experience travel anxiety or culture shock without harming anyone, and that panic alone does not justify killing a disabled man in his sleep. The courtroom atmosphere shifted daily, depending on which side presented their narrative. Some days, the prosecution's version seemed airtight, a woman with a history of transactional relationships who fled the scene of a crime. Other days, the defense's story resonated more, a broken woman pushed beyond her mental threshold by deception and emotional manipulation in a foreign land. The jury was left with a difficult question, not whether LaToya had acted, because that was clear, but why she acted. Was she the calculating opportunist the prosecution described, or the psychologically cornered woman the defense portrayed? In the end, the courtroom became the place where two opposing truths existed at the same time. A vulnerable man died in a moment of profound betrayal, and a vulnerable woman claimed she snapped under pressure she believed she could not escape. The verdict would determine which truth would shape the rest of LaToya's life. When the jury returned, the entire courtroom went still. No one breathed. No one moved. LaToya sat frozen, staring straight ahead, knowing her future depended on a single sheet of paper in the foreperson's hand. The verdict came quickly. Not premeditated murder, but a serious form of homicide, one that acknowledged she acted intentionally in the moment, but without planning or long-term calculation. Gasps echoed across the room. Arjun's family closed their eyes in disappointment. LaToya's mother quietly wept, and LaToya herself sat stunned, tears forming before she even realized she was crying. Sentencing happened shortly after. The judge kept it direct. They acknowledged her clean record. They acknowledged the emotional manipulation, the deception, the power imbalance, and the fact that she was overwhelmed in a foreign country. But they didn't soften the reality. She had other options. She didn't take them, and a man who trusted her was dead. The sentence: 28 years. No drama, no speeches, just the cold thud of a number that would swallow half her life. LaToya broke down, not only for herself, but for her children, for the years she would miss, and for the man she had both cared for and feared. Her attorneys helped her stand as deputies led her away, her face streaked with tears and disbelief. In a matter of seconds, the courtroom emptied, leaving behind a tragedy with no real winners, only two families carrying different kinds of grief. When you strip the case down to its core, what happened between LaToya and Arjun wasn't just crime, it was collision. Two lonely people from opposite worlds stepped into a fantasy, and reality hit harder than either of them expected. A woman in Texas who'd spent years trying to stay afloat. A man in Dubai who had everything except the thing he wanted most: connection. Both hiding parts of themselves. Both hoping the lie would hold long enough to feel loved. Catfishing played its part. Power imbalance played its part. Fear and desperation filled in the rest. And when those pieces stacked on top of each other in a foreign hotel suite, everything cracked at once. This story isn't about villains and saints. It's about how quickly things can spiral when honesty disappears and when people build entire relationships on hope instead of truth. Some see LaToya as a manipulator. Some see her as a woman who snapped under pressure. Some see Arjun as deceitful. Others see him as someone starving for affection. In the end, two lives were destroyed because both of them were running from something, and both of them believed an online fantasy could save them. It didn't. If you found this story powerful or thought-provoking, don't forget to like this video and share your thoughts in the comments below. Let us know where you're watching from, your city, your country, your corner of the world. We read them all. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next case we uncover. Thank you for watching.